Hello and welcome to the 100th social recruiting show. We're slightly excited about this in case you hadn't noticed. Of course, we have two very special guests who you may now be able to see or not possibly because we think that one of them is hiding, to talk with myself, Katrina Collier, social recruiting trainer and speaker, and gorgeous co-host Audra Knight, employer branding genius, nerd, whatever I'm calling her this week, about robots and humans and who does recruitment better. So, of course, we have Jason Roberts, who I have here, who might be somewhere else, from Ranstad. And over here, we have potentially hiding, unless you can actually see him, Jim Stroud, fighting it out for the humans, maybe. Welcome both to a very special show.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us. Let's start with you, Jim. Could you, if anyone doesn't know you, if that's possible, could you tell them a little bit about how you got into the field and what you're up to now?
Well, I got into the whole recruiting sourcing thing because of a girl.
I sourced my wife.
At one point, my career aspirations were to be a playwright and screenwriter. I was making short films. I was in college. That was my major in college, film and video. And I was flame at the time, by any means. And so the woman I was dating said, well, if you're going to be with me, you need to get a real job. So I went to the college career center, and there was a sign on the job board that said get paid to internet, and I thought, yeah, I can do that. So I went there, and it was a sourcing gig for AI, and I had no idea what sourcing was, and I think they barely knew. This was back in 1997 when nobody knew really what it was. It was before Ayers was even training people. And so I went to the interview and I asked them, you know, I can surf the web, I guess. Before that, my only experience was surfing, finding bikini pictures. Sad but true. And so I said, what do you want me to do? Because I know how to do on it. And she said, well, we need people to go online and find resumes for different jobs. I said, really? So how? And she changed the subject. And I thought, oh, okay, you don't know how to do it. I guess it makes sense. You want to find somebody who knows how to do it. I remember going home after the interview, going to Yahoo and finding Google, which was a part of Yahoo. And I remember looking help
Yahoo?
menu.
I don't know what Yahoo is. I'm Yahoo.
Yeah, really.
Is that back in the dial-up?
Yeah, pretty much. Back when people thought AOL was internet.
Yeah.
So I remember going to the help menu and reading how to use a search engine. And so I figured to do that, and then I looked online at the jobs they had posted on their site, and I found a couple of resumes off of a site called headhunter.net, which also dates me pretty old. I think Jason probably heard of it. I don't know anybody else had heard of it.
Actually here. Jason's pictures disappeared.
You're still here today?
I don't know. I think he scared me away. Oh, there it is. Speaking of the angel, and he appears.
Can I just say, Jim decided to stop in and have dodgy Wi-Fi on the way to work. You know, we've only been for 2 months.
Yeah.
So, you know, we just have to stare at his gorgeous picture. Do we actually have to go through the whole show?
And so that's my story. That was it. So I sent the resumes in. They hired me and been doing it ever since.
Wow. So was that how long ago? 20 years?
1997. So, yeah.
Yeah, wow, 21. How'd that happen?
Ooh, wow.
Yeah,
so that's how we did it back in my day. That's how we did it.
Back in my day, we used to use
back in my day.
Wow. So, Jim, have you been in sourcing your entire career, or did you ever leave it and come back?
I left it and came back. At one point, I was a social media development manager for a company called Global English, which was eventually purchased by a company called Pearson. And for a time, I worked also for Bernard Hoda's group, which did recruitment marketing. So those were short stints. I tried to leave sourcing, but it broke back in. You couldn't leave.
Yeah, it sucks. And now you get to work next to this gorgeous man, don't you? He's looking like a robot.
Yes.
Yeah.
I bow to his knowledge.
Yeah. Mr.
Let's
Roberts.
go with you, Jason.
Between like robots and humans, so I decided to sort of go halfway and go Iron Man.
He's one of the better robots in inverted commas.
Yeah. So I'm taking this thing off on.
Really? I thought you could do your whole how you got into sourcing with that on.
Well, it's funny. I can't do that. But my story is very similar to Jim's, though. It wasn't about a girl, though. But 1997, same year, I got into recruiting, and it was weird for me. I thought I was going to be like a preacher. That's really the job I thought I was going to have. I worked in the church at the time, and one of the guys that helped me with the youth group at the church, he was a recruiter, and he said, "Hey, I've heard you can find candidates on the internet, but we don't know how to do that. Would you like to do that, and I'll split fees with you?" I said, "Sure, I'll try," because I didn't really make money at the time.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing that, and I did the same thing. I just looked up how to started Googling. Well, didn't Google Yahoo stuff, and then Headhunter.net.
It doesn't sound right, does it? Yahoo stuff doesn't have the same ring to it.
Well, Google was sort of, I don't know what it was. Was it embedded in Yahoo at one point, or it was weird? I think that's what it was. But it's I did the same thing. I had to search on how to do this the right way, and then found Headhunter.net, which was awesome, like the best job board of its time, and it was absolutely free. And then you had paid boards, but for the guys that were just kind of stumbling into it, that's not what we were using. So it was a great time. Remember, computer jobs back in the day was a big one. Headhunter.net was a big one, and Hot Jobs. Remember that one back in the day?
Is Hot Jobs still exist?
It's been through a couple of acquisitions. Hot Jobs. It was acquired by Yahoo and Resumix or something. It was a weird deal way back when. Gorgeous
Michael Cox has written a great thing here. Your first split. Yes, it's like the taste that the dealer uses to get you hooked.
And it worked.
It worked. Look, you should go back to me and say, 21 years later, I'm still stuck here. It's your fault. I
made like my actual day job. They gave me a place to live and $100 a week. That was my full income in 1997. And so when I started doing these splits, I thought I was rich. Yeah. Like, you split a $2,000 fee and you've been living on $100 a week, then you have found your calling at that point. Yeah. That is gold. Yeah. It was awesome.
It's quite amazing though, but I bet you wouldn't change it for anything now, because it's changed so much in 20 years, right?
Oh, I love it. I love it. It's SourceCon in March is going to be about lessons learned.
Yeah.
And I've been a lot about my career and how I got here, and the whole do what you love, you never work a day in your life sort of story, and the lessons I've learned along the way. Literally, that's what I've been thinking about for the last 2 or 3 days, because I have to turn in my topic on Monday.
Yeah, so, Shannon sent the email through. She's in here, by the way. And I'm like, oh, God, I haven't thought that far. Like, it's March. They're so organized. No wonder they run such an awesome conference. But,
Oh, exactly. The thing's not until March, and I have to turn in my stuff on.
Yeah, like now, I know. Bless her. But that's why it's so good and so well attended. Now we just have to work out, how do we get Audra there? Maybe I need somebody to help in my room. That'd be great. Jim, are you at Seattle? You better be. Audra said no to me. Oh, you're in trouble.
I'm sure I'll pop up somewhere in there. You never know.
Oh, you better. You better. If I'm stateside, you've got to be there. It's all happening. Oh, yeah. So, who's taking what position here in our showdown? You know, because obviously it's no longer 1997. We've evolved, and apparently you're all going to be replaced, so you won't have a job in 10 years' time, apparently.
So I'll tell you what I can take a really one-sided view of this. I don't actually believe that there's a one-sided view of it. I did a bull session for ERE in San Diego that. And the bull session, it was one of the most fun things I've ever done. Yeah. Where you have a controversial topic, 5 minutes to give your spiel, and then the audience decides whether you're full of bull or not.
Yeah.
No, that's fun.
Yeah, it was awesome. I think I'm the only one that did a controversial one, because everybody else the audience liked, and mine they didn't like very much. But my
you didn't agree with their opinion on the world. They didn't like you.
They did not like mine. I was from an extreme, and the extreme was that I think machines can provide a more human experience than humans can alone.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was my perspective. Machines can provide
and that was only 5 minutes. I think we can give you 5 minutes to explain that one.
Okay.
Come
on, pull out your deck. Let's go.
There we go. No deck, no slides. The deal with this is no slides.
Wow.
I think I had one slide that introduced like what the shtick was, but that was it. Yeah. So here's the story. Humans got outmatched at some point. Human recruiters got outmatched when candidates got automation and we didn't. So if you think about how we used to find candidates, it used to be about who was in your Rolodex and you were working the phone. Who do you know? Who do you know? Who do you know?
Yeah.
We started automating that stuff, and it was easier for candidates to come to us. And the application process went online. There's a lot more machine involved on the candidate side, and they get to work in parallel. Lots of them get to contact us at one time. We work serially. We can only talk to one person at a time. We can send bulk emails, but email isn't the greatest when it comes to getting responses. The most effective way to interact with candidates is typically still direct one-on-one interactions, right? And even when you send emails, sending a bulk email that's not personalized isn't the best thing in the world, right?
For sure.
Exactly. So you're in a place where one half of the equation gets to work in parallel. You work one by one by one. We finally have tools that allow us to work in parallel, where the tools can customize the messages that go out to candidates and send information. The tools can give them updates on what's happening in their requisition. My biggest pet peeve, we have a lot of personalization and automation in our consumer lives today.
Yeah.
If you think about Netflix is serving up movies that I want to see, Amazon is offering me products that I want to see. Very personal.
Never share your Prime account with anyone, though.
Yeah.
You must get that.
There's a story behind that.
No, I'm sure you all get that if your kids are on your accounts and stuff as well.
Oh my god!
Well, that's why you get multiple.
No, really, I don't want to know about cycling.
I get offered more anime on my Netflix than I ever should, like because my kids keep watching anime. It's ridiculous, but
we know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. But so these are very personalized experiences.
Yeah.
Amazon when I show up to Amazon, it is a store that is my store. It's all the stuff that I love. It's games and comic books and superheroes and Star Wars. Like the greatest store I've ever been in my life. Every time I log in.
There you are. Welcome back, Jim. Sorry, Jason.
When I go to Walmart or Target, it's not personal. Like I go to Target, the first thing I see is like diapers. I don't have kids with that.
What? You'll need them soon enough.
Well, no. I got a kid in college, man. I don't need.
Is that what you meant?
I meant you.
Oh, for me, yeah. I mean, pretty soon.
Oh, God.
Anyway, so it's a more personal experience, right? Here's the other one.
Why would you really just say that?
She did. She thinks I need adult diapers. I'll get my Depends out. It'll be great.
Can we stay away from the poop, okay? On top of the fact Susanna's here will make us laugh at some point about poop. I've got a really poorly dog. I don't want to think about poop. So, so did you hear all of that, Jim? I don't know whether
I was here. I was here the whole time.
You were just having a nap.
Yeah, I'm always here. You might not be able to see me, but I am here.
Cool. So what do you make of all of that? You're taking the opposing corner, aren't you?
Opposing corner. I agree with Jason from the standpoint of it's a good thing that some things can be personalized, and that's cool, and also helps you do your different tasks. Where I diverge slightly on is when you get into privacy issues, or worse yet, when robots become bosses. That's when I get nervous. A couple of points on that. If anyone ever drives Uber, then you know that there are times when you're driving an Uber and there's what's called a surge, where you get paid extra money if you drive during this time period. All right, that's all set up by an algorithm. So a robot boss is telling you want to make more money? Now work at this point. If you're going to drive it at this time, you're going to make less money because I'm not going to surge it at that time. That's all algorithm. And I know some Uber drivers who complain about when they can do it, when they can make more money doing these surges, when they can't. And so that's a back and forth thing. That gives me concern. And then
but
another
what
example.
I do love about the Uber, though, when they decide they're finishing, which could be a random time, it will get them fares home, which is kind of cool. So that's still a robot. But it will.
Robot. That's a happy robot.
It's
a happy robot.
Yeah. So
Well,
I actually
it's funny.
see that side of it, because I often seem to be getting them at the end of shift. I don't know what that's about.
It's funny that Jason said happy robot. Did I hear that Jason said happy robot?
Yes. Yeah.
You might like this. I'll send the link to you and anybody else who wants to see it. Maybe I'll post it over here on the side in a minute. But there was this article, a couple articles I read that were quoting this scientific journal called Robot Science or something like that. Yeah. They were doing different experiments between robots and humans and how they interact. And in this one experiment, they were doing this thing called the Stroop test. And what a Stroop test is, you have to identify a color. So on the screen would be the word green, but the background would be pink or blue or something like that. Mm-hmm. Identify the color and that kind of thing. And so when they did the test, human beings picked the colors and they did okay. They did okay. And then they repeated the test with a robot present. And the robot first would be silent, but it was in the room. And they still did about the same. But when the robot started saying, "You can do better, come on," it started, ride them a little bit, their productivity increased slightly or increased somewhat. And so the study was arguing that if you had a mean robot over workers, you could improve your productivity based on that study. And so when robots get your Twilight Zone,
I think it depends who was in the room at the time, because it wouldn't have worked on me.
Well, it was just the test subjects and the robot. And so I'm wondering
told the robot where to shove it.
Because was it a Cylon, like the guy with the one red eye?
I wonder, it could have been a Terminator. Maybe it's a Terminator.
Do they have a gun? I don't know.
It does depend on the robot.
Yeah.
Happy robot. It makes me wonder that while robots can improve productivity and make things easier, I wonder if eventually companies will say, put in a robot boss and save you more money. And studies like this prove that robot bosses can improve productivity. That's where I start getting nervous, because other studies have suggested people can be programmed by robots. And I have another example for that too. So that's really weird.
God.
Yeah. It's
kind of scary.
It's weird.
So,
it is. Yeah.
Trista's got a question here. So on robots becoming bosses, are you not already using algorithms, and he's written maths for some reason in brackets, to predict hiring and impose KPIs on recruiters? So on robots becoming bosses, are you not already using algorithms or maths to predict hiring and impose KPIs on recruiters?
We use algorithms to predict hiring, but more about the requisitions themselves. So I can tell you on the day that a requisition opens, with a pretty decent amount of accuracy, when it will be filled based on attributes about that rec. But usually those algorithms are used to determine what levers we pull to get those recs to fill when we want them, right? So that's a little bit different. So when we're setting goals for recruiters, we actually do it based on their past performance. So we look at what they've typically been able to achieve and the types of recs they're carrying, and set expectations based on that. So we use the algorithms to help us inform those decisions. But what we learned, we used to have a set goal for recruiters, and what we ended up doing was building it where each manager sets a goal personally that the recruiter has based on some criteria, because we decided the algorithms just weren't strong enough. There's too many variables in types of positions and types of roles and what they're working on, and how many unique hiring managers versus non-unique hiring managers they have. All of that plays into a factor of what productivity should be. So we don't have robot bosses yet.
Thank God. Would you?
No,
I think it would be easier. It would be easier to manage, it would be easier.
I suppose it'd be easier to tell off because they wouldn't take offense when I was, effing and blinking at them.
There you go. That's true.
They'd be like, "Oh, it's just Katrina. We'll just ignore that."
I think human beings would take a baseball bat and destroy robots eventually. Because I've read reports about people attacking Uber cars, robot cars. So I imagine people would definitely get mad at the machine and hit it or something.
Yeah, I think
they do that with people.
Yeah, with laptops.
So what I like about the robot boss thing with Uber is that it's a boss you don't have to listen to. So the robot boss is offering you options to do more stuff. You can make more money if you do this thing, but it's in a free open market where you can choose not to work today if you don't want to.
Yeah,
and it's not, so it can't be a robot overlord. It's just it's a boss that tells you what it needs you to do, and it's helping to run the business. And I think that helps keep the robots in check, because Uber's a funny thing. They're a marketplace. They're selling to two different constituencies. They're selling to riders and to drivers. Yeah, I really like that combination. The robot boss in that scenario doesn't bother me so much.
I need another scenario to think about too. Then.
Oh God, here he goes.
Well, somewhat of a robot boss. Amazon they filed this patent where their workers in the warehouse put on some kind of like a wristband or something. I forget exactly what it is, but as they're working, let's say that they should have a box over here and putting it over there, but instead of putting it over there, they're doing something over here. Well, they get something like a equivalent of a shot thing or something, or wrist thing. No, your hand should be over here, which will make you more productive. So, and it's true. I did a video on it.
Like electric dog collars. No.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not a robot boss per se, but it's part of the process that will
it's not an electric dock. It's a haptic feedback like I have on my Apple Watch. Like your watch buzzes you.
Or like a Fitbit thing, tell you to get up and walk or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not an electric shock. That's different.
Okay, maybe I'm being a little dramatic. But they do have a patent.
I'm in the dog collar.
I put it on my wrist on purpose. So there's nothing too bad about that.
Oh, somebody put a link to it in the chat window.
That's awesome. That's KC. Here is what else Amazon. Oh God, it just moved too fast. Is doing with their warehouse employees. Blah, blah, blah. No, you have to explain that one, Casey. We can't read. What are we talking? Oh, bless you.
So the other thing that Amazon does do that I was talking to a person that was checking me out at Walmart, and she had quit Amazon and had gone to work at Walmart. She was brand new, and she had been fired because of an algorithm. And what had happened is they had these sort of KPIs they had to hit, and she was given sort of a special project to work along with her normal job. And the algorithm couldn't take into account that she was working on another project along with her normal productivity goals. So she was fired because of an algorithm. And the actual people there didn't have any recourse to make adjustments. Right. So that's a bad implementation of an algorithm.
You know, that makes me...
Sorry, can I just put in Mike's comment?
Yeah, go ahead, Katrina.
Tasers in the workplace would be a downgrade for those of us.
Oh no!
Sorry, that's dreadful. I shouldn't have just interrupted you and done that. Sorry, Jim. What was your train of thought before I mentioned that?
I love this.
But Mike's
you shared that on Glassdoor. That is funny. No, to Jason's point, that's concerning to me for a number of reasons, not just for other angles as well. In the case of this woman who was fired because of an algorithm, how did that person find was responsible? Did the company scapegoat the process and say that's why it was a mistake, or did she know? How did she find out the algorithm did it?
You find this a lot in sort of low skill, high volume jobs.
Right.
Store checkers, they have to check X number of items per minute in order to be on the leaderboard and tracked appropriately. They may be great conversationalists. They may have customers that go to their line on purpose and want to interact with them. They may be a huge asset, but if their items per minute aren't checked appropriately, they're out, because the company makes money by checking people out, taking their money, and having the next person come through the line. So, but you'll find this, and this is what happened in Amazon. She had a set productivity target. I don't know if it was like items packed per minute or what, but she wasn't hitting her productivity numbers. And it couldn't take into account the other things that she was doing. And you find this a lot in low skill jobs with high volumes. Call centers, you have the same sort of thing. You may have a very personable call center person. That's not their job. Their job is answer questions, close the next ticket. So their ticket resolution numbers aren't right. So we've had management by algorithm for a long time. It doesn't make it into knowledge workers most of the time, but these low volume, high volume, low skill jobs, it's very common.
That's actually why I use self-checkout, because they have to check you out at a certain speed at Sainsbury's, and I can't pack fast enough because we pack ourselves here in the UK, and I just can't. I'm like, and stop throwing my food. So I actually go to the self-checkout so I can scan at my pace, place in bag at my place. Yeah, you're under this pressure to scan, and they throw your food, and it's like, I just paid for those tomatoes, and you've just thrown them upside down onto the conveyor. So because they're under this ridiculous pressure.
I want people to have jobs. I like the people having jobs, and I don't. The store's not giving me a discount for doing their work, so I figure.
See, we don't have that. We don't have packers, so.
Oh yeah, packers are good. I like the packers.
Yeah. So we don't have that. So you can have it if you go up and ask for it, and then you've got to wait for them to free someone up to do your stuff, and you're like, yeah.
Yeah, that's different.
There's still plenty of stuff in there.
Yeah. I don't understand people that say, though, that only go to the ones to don't do self-checkout because this is these people's jobs. Because what about the people's jobs that build the machines for the self-checkout? And there's a million jobs tied to that you just don't see. No?
Oh, my gosh. I did a whole thing on this. There's not a million jobs. It's a different set of jobs. So if you look at the way that the gap in sort of the economy is showing up, where the middle class is starting to disappear along the way, what's happening is these lower to middle class jobs are appearing, and you're seeing more and more wealth transferred to a smaller percentage of people. Well, these are the knowledge workers that are building things like the self-checkout machine. They build that self-checkout machine, and maybe it replaces 15 workers, and it took 2 workers who get paid a lot more to create these self-checkout machines. But that one machine replaced 15 workers. They made thousands of them. So a lot of wealth is transferred to that upper echelon group, where this lower tier is having a really hard time finding jobs. I have a kid that's going to be exiting college pretty soon, and with the level of offshoring and the way that we've changed work in the U.S., it's hard to find your first job. And millennials coming out of school, that's why you see so many of them still living with their parents, because finding that first job is much harder than it used to be because of automation and offshoring.
Isn't some of that also, though, I'm going to be a bit controversial, and we're off topic. We should get back on topic. But due to the fact that too many people are pushed to go on, I'm assuming by college you mean university.
Yes.
We have the problem here where too many have gone off and got degrees. So now there's too many graduates and not enough people in trades. So we have a shortage of plasters and plumbers, and because the government sort of stepped in and pushed everyone that route. And it's the same in Australia, and I believe it's the same in the US. It's just.
Yeah, I would say that's part of the reason. People going to school for the wrong thing, and then they have all this debt. Yeah,
and then there are a lot of people who don't actually want to start at the bottom as well. Sorry, that's another whole conversation.
Yeah, that's the bad too. They're not hungry enough, I guess. You get hungry enough, you do what you got to do.
Triss has asked a great question here that does bring us back on track, which I'm going to let Audra read out because I'm talking over her constantly.
Oh, no worries. Do you think these algo-driven jobs will become more commonplace in recruiting too.
So I know you answered there, Jim, but do you want to answer out loud? Because that's really cool.
Actually, I misunderstood this question. Let me read the question again.
So do you think these algorithm-driven jobs will become more commonplace in recruiting too?
Okay, and I would say in terms of more the gig platforms. So we did the example of Uber. I'm thinking of other platforms like maybe TaskRabbit. So imagine that you log into TaskRabbit to find a job and then to find a gig, and then you perform well. So TaskRabbit will send you first notice of certain because you're getting good feedback from the customers that you deal with. And so you can work this particular. I'm going to give this to you first because you got the best customer reviews, which reflects better on the company brand. So yeah, I can definitely see them doing that. And then maybe not showing jobs as quickly to people who are rated lower.
Do you think that's good or bad? Sounds good.
I think it's good for the brand of the company, but I don't know if it's fair.
It's unfair for people starting out.
Yeah.
How do you get your first ratings and
I agree with that.
Going.
It's not fair. So.
Well, there's like Recruit Loop was a company that I took a look at a couple of years ago. Indeed did an experiment with Indeed Crowd, but I think they've closed now. There's been some attempts at sort of crowd-based recruiting like this. So basically, Uber for recruiting. There's been some passes at it. I think that eventually one of these things will stick, but it's a little bit more difficult in our space. I think eventually that'll show up. You'll have Uber for recruiting here one day.
That'll be interesting. I think it'd be a real shame if they do not show jobs to people based on ratings. I'm thinking really randomly about I've gone to Etsy to purchase things, but actually I'm having stuff specifically made for me, and that's like they're showing their job, like they've got a job out of that. I know it's kind of different; it's more on the trade side, but you're kind of thinking it's if they had just shown the best shops, I wouldn't have seen what I needed to get it create kind of thing. Yeah. Anyway, I'm off topic as usual.
Let me do a tangent on that because I'm curious. Let me get Jason's opinion on this too. Okay, so let's say we have these algorithms acting as bosses or managing people. I'm wondering what would be some of the factors they would use in terms of algorithms. So let's say that some company want to take human beings out of it altogether and just like out hiring something like that. And I doubt that would work. But just
hiring or like algorithmic management.
Just hiring, or maybe just say making the best recommendation. They did not even hire, just making the best recommendations of who to hire, and the human being makes the biased choice, but the algorithm makes the recommendation. And I'm wondering, and what I'm thinking about that is I've been reading up recently on Facebook's. You guys heard about this?
Facebook's what? Sorry.
Facebook it's a new thing. I mean, it came out like literally this early this week, so maybe you haven't heard of it. It was
you dropped out right as you said the word.
Okay, yeah. Facebook has this thing called a trustworthy score.
Okay.
Yeah, it's their attempt to monitor fake news on their platform. So if they think that you are spread fake news or you're not a trustworthy site, then you would get a negative score, a negative Facebook rating score. And so they will not allow your stuff to go viral because you've got a negative score. They won't tell you what your score is. They just say you have a score. And if your score is negative that you can't see, it will not proliferate throughout the Facebook ecosystem.
Is that on pages or on profiles?
They're rolling it out. They announced that they're rolling it out. Maybe somebody can look it up. But they announced it like this week. And so,
tangent. You know what else they just announced? That's genius.
What's that?
You know how you can snooze somebody on Facebook so you don't have to see their posts? They have keyword snooze. So if there's a keyword in a post, you don't see it.
Oh, that's great.
I was going to
say,
oh
my God, I can lose your
spoilers
out of
I can
my
watch
feed.
Game of Thrones. Yeah, if I don't watch Game of Thrones and I want a spoiler, that could work.
So you go there, I go straight for your president. Yeah, okay.
Well, that's what it is. But I ran to the snooze, and I snooze anybody that says the word Trump, because Facebook is not relevant for politics. I don't care. I want to see, if I want to read politics, I go to an actual news site, not the echo chamber of social media. That's not what that's for.
It depends. So, I have one awesome friend, though, that I can rely on to deliver me a balanced view on stuff. So I love it in that respect. But I can go to his feed and look.
That's all you have to do. Go to their feed.
Yeah, I love that, because
Jim's question that he asked. Now I'm having to bring us back.
No, we have to go back to sourcing as well. I want to know where the robots will take over there. So we can't miss that.
We're actually building this sort of algorithmic decision-making thing right now.
Yeah.
And there's a thing that we'll actually start putting into people's hands. It's supposed to be October 30th is our first group of recruiters that get to use this.
Right.
But basically, it's a bot that does an intake session with you as a recruiter. And it takes a rec, and it says, all right, based on this rec, here's all the things that I think are important. What's most important to you? The recruiter says, all right, these skills are the most important skills. These are less important. Yeah. And it sort of defines what it's going to ask candidates about based on the priorities that you set coming out of that rec. Then it presents candidates back to you and says there are some that are unqualified, some that are qualified, and some that are ideal. And different actions
based on their database,
based on conversations they've had. So when they may search the database and find candidates and reach out to them. Candidates apply. It may respond directly to those candidates when they apply. But they do the screening based on the criteria the recruiter sets up, and then different actions can take place. If someone's a perfect fit, you may say just book that person a time on my calendar. Offer them a Calendly link, right? Or it might be something like this person is a 80% match, and I want to review those before I offer them a Calendly link. And then the ones that are not a fit, they don't meet my criteria. It's different, but there's still a recruiter that decides where the priorities are. So the way that I'm starting to look at this, and the way that we're thinking about it, is that it's not robots or recruiters. It's actually more like I was using the Iron Man suit, so not the Terminator, but Iron Man. We're using that suit, and that's why I had the head on earlier.
He's slightly hotter than the Terminator, just saying.
A little bit. Oh, not me. Oh, you were talking about okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry. I think it's more like autopilot. I think it's like an autopilot, really. Yeah. So on airplanes, I'm not offended by the fact that the pilot does not always have his hand on the yoke. I'm happy with the fact that there's an autopilot doing most of the flying in the middle. Yeah. But I still need a really skilled hand during takeoff. I want to make sure that doesn't go wrong. While we're in the air, somebody to monitor and make sure things are going smoothly, and then a skilled hand at landing. And
I think my concern is though, actually in your case, because obviously I guess this is more for your agent recruiters, isn't it? So they have to have got a good intake from the company. So how reliable is the bot at getting a good intake? Because we're still coming back to the human aspect, and that's when all of these things apparently we're trying to avoid, like bias, etc., all come in. So it's how good is it at getting that initial intake? And it's funny, Steve Levy's just turned up right on that point, which was quite funny because obviously he did an intake show with us a few weeks back. It still comes back to how good is it that how good is the human putting in the information that the bot's asking for? Like, I hear what you're saying, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And again, going back to your database and using it better, which again is great because these people are given permission to be there. But I'm still like, still human.
We'll get there. You do need the intake piece. You can see how very easily, like the recruiter still is the middleman there, right? The recruiter is talking to the manager, then providing the machine input. We think that's important still because the machines aren't evolved enough to take over that initial hiring manager discussion. But you can see how that might be the next step, right? For remove the middleman, have the machine do that intake. And do that. So we'll see what happens and where this goes. Right now, I prefer to have the pilot at the takeoff point and the pilot at landing, and I don't like autopilot at takeoff yet.
I had a very funny story about autopilot in Africa, where he takes off plane levels, he takes off his long distance glasses, puts on his reading glasses, hands come off, and he's sitting there reading the paper when this little plane in Africa bobbing all over the place. And I'm like, okay, I'm no longer concerned about flying because he's fine. I can see him. I was sitting right behind him. I could see him. It's very funny. What has Jonathan written here? Recruiting automation at the top of the funnel will open the funnel to a wider audience, allowing companies to increase the intake while using the automation to filter through and keep both candidates and recruiter in communication about the next step. Yeah?
Yeah, that's
true.
right.
True. The people have got to come to you, though. They've got to come to you.
It has to come to you. So we were talking earlier about the consumer experience that we have.
Yeah.
And I'm going to Americanize myself pretty deeply here. When I order a pizza from Pizza Hut.
We have Pizza Hut here in the UK.
You have the tracker that shows you exactly where your pizza is in the process.
That's so cool.
That is very cool.
It's not needed, but it's cool.
I love it. I know that my pizza's being made. I know it's in the oven. I know that it's out for delivery and when it's expected to be in my house.
Yeah.
How in the world is it that a candidate can't know that about this life-changing experience of changing a job?
Yeah.
Why don't we have that?
Oh my God. It's the same as when you get in your car, isn't it? You set the sat nav, you know where you're going, but you do it anyway, so you know exactly what time you're going to arrive. Like, we want to know. We want the certainty and the clarity. So absolutely, I agree. Number one complaint, black hole recruitment. So.
But what are you supposed to do? Tell them if it's just sitting in your ATS because you've got too many to look at. Like, how much can you tell them?
I'm wading through a massive pile of them right now. I've got 90 applications. I'm doing the best I can to reach yours. If you don't hear from me, pester me. I think applicants that are enthusiastic will annoy you.
Or something like this. Here's the place you're at. The average time in this status is X. You are one of 15 people at this stop. Typically, 3% of those people move forward. You know, whatever your stats are, you could actually give them stats and set expectations at each point in the process. Right?
Okay.
We have
a tool for that?
If we simply made it transparent, that would be just make it transparent.
It can't be that bad.
What's going on?
So you're saying use a tool though, or have the recruiter?
Either.
A tool. I think a tool. Because recruiters don't have time to do all those phone calls, right? Machines can do that. I mean, I don't need to talk to the guy.
Designed.
I don't know what pizza is. I'm happier to look at the pizza tracker and know where that is.
Have you designed this yet?
Yeah. Why isn't it?
What I'll say is that it's
like side project, right?
Yeah.
Jim, jump in and say
Shark Tank.
Being very quiet. It's like we've lost you.
Because I'm looking at the comments here on the side here, and somebody asked, when will? Let me go back to the question. Jonathan asked, the question is, when is tech going to get out of the high volume big companies and RPOs and into the mid market? And I was responding to him in the chat window saying, when the prices come down. You know, every year tech, you know, it's always expensive initially. Eventually the pricing will come down a bit more and more as new upgrades and new versions come out. And eventually get to a price point that mid-markets and smaller companies can take more advantage of these automated tools. Or it's going to be
the tech company. The tech companies always go after the big enterprise deals. They seem to forget how much business is in the SMB space. It's crazy.
Yeah.
There's so much business to be had in that area.
Yeah, but also think it depends on the startup company, I guess, who is the founder of that company, because I'm thinking about this company in California that makes this burger flipping robot, and they're going after all the smaller tier companies. They didn't go straight to McDonald's or Burger King. They're going after these smaller companies and selling this burger flip. That may be one part of it.
When you sit down, I spend a lot of time with startup CEOs, and they have one person maybe as a salesperson. Typically, it's a part of the CEO's job to be the head salesperson.
Of course.
So it's a lot less effort to interact with fewer people for bigger deals, and especially venture funded, that makes a lot more sense for them. And venture companies want to see the logos along the way as well. And if you can have 100 mom and pops, but that's not nearly as impressive as one big logo for the big companies. So that's well, it's just the truth of the situation.
I know, but it's like, yeah.
Well, you get a big logo.
They've got to be harder to get to as well. And do we really want someone that has NatWest who hasn't done the SMB space? Maybe the SMBs want the SMBs. I thought Tris made a great point back up here as well, actually. Most recruiters are not capable of saying no. So all they do is amplify a company's bias. We should be focused on educating companies and hiring managers on why their biases are wrong and not blame tech as well.
Wait a minute. Recruiters have a hard time saying no?
I do think they do. I mean, when you go back to we want the transparency with Domino's, how scary is it for me to go, oh, Audra, sorry, you haven't made it, and you could just kick off at me? Because we are in the rejection business. So for me to say, I'm sorry, look,
well, I think at some point,
and you're like, but I've got the perfect skills for that, and you end up with a fight.
I think at some point, though, is some recruiters may be nervous about saying no because then it's why. And then you give them a reason if you do decide to give them a reason, and then they want to argue your reason, and then can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. And then they may want to argue against you as to why you said no, and then where they want to argue discriminatory practices or something, And if you just give them a standard form of thanks but no thanks, you can avoid. So I think that's why they do it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's where the bot would be great. But again, I still think the bot will be argued with why you've rejected my application.
Yeah.
Well, I think.
Can we have a fighting bot?
What's funny is recruiters, we're in the job. We do this, or hopefully most of us do it, because we like finding people work. Yeah. I think that's the core of what we do. It's the thing that makes us think we're making a difference in the world is that we're finding people work. The saying no part is super hard. Yeah. We all run into it. The place that it's most amplified for me is when friends call me. They're like, "Hey, I need a job. Can you help me?" And I'm like, "I got nothing. I can't help you with that." Saying no is really, really hard. Machines help with that, but I think that trusting a machine to do all the dirty work, in that case, that's where you need that human touch the most. I think that it's the part that we hate the most as well.
Tris has just clarified he was talking about intake. Sorry, I did take that in a different direction. I did it a bit selfishly. So training against bias. So even if you've got a robot taking the intake, if we don't educate the managers about bias,
well, you can actually teach
it.
But you can also put some bias filters on the bots themselves. So we're using a tool called Hired Score in a couple of places, and they have an algorithmically driven matching system. So they basically look at people who have been selected or matched to jobs and who have been hired in the past as a part of how they decide who's a good match for this next job. So they'll say, we've hired 10 people like Bob. Bob's probably a good fit. We'll go for that. What they've done is they've also inserted bias filters, so they can only look at certain things. They can only look at skills and qualifications and things of that. So
that sounds awesome.
Yeah, was that the article Glenn published this morning as well? There was a couple of technologies he referred to in there. Did you see that?
Bias?
Yeah, I'm scared. I'm scared to open it just in case I blow up.
I have a link to it. I'll put it up.
Yeah, he wrote it on LinkedIn, didn't he? And there were a couple of technologies he used that did what you're saying. It hit everything.
Randy Bailey shared it with me.
Yeah, you can add those.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Huh. It seemed like it would be a good for somebody to audit algorithms. I know there's at least one company that does that. Because I wrote an article about it was called Today as a Civil Rights Issue, and I was talking about how algorithms really ruin somebody's day, but you don't know who to, or you don't really have a recourse if an algorithm says you're not a match for this or something's wrong. That's the compass system, which is say you're across the street and some security cam spots your face and your face is similar to somebody in a database who's a mass murderer. Then the police can go after you and detain you legally because your face matches something that's in a database. And then when you've proven that you're not that person, you have no recourse. There's nothing you can really do about it. You match a description inside the database. And Compass is a system that a lot of police stations use. And so in the article, and what I bring up here is that if you ever put in a precarious position because of an algorithm, what kind of recourse do you have? If everybody can say, well, the machine had a bug and that's it, but you've already been inconvenienced in some way. So I think it would be really cool if somebody had a company. There's only one company that does it that I found, which I cited in the article. But somebody just goes around and just checks these algorithms to see if there is bias. Would be a very rich company, I would think.
There's a GDPR, right? So one of the protections in GDPR.
Yes, Jonathan, they did. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, one of the protections in GDPR is protection against algorithmic decision making. Right, so that is a rule. We can't make decisions based on algorithms, based on that. So I think you'll see more and more focus on those sorts of things. And I think auditing makes sense. What's hard is algorithms change literally by the second. You hear about learning machines.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's because the machine is seeing what information it takes in today is shifting the algorithm, so it'll have different weightings for the next decision that it makes. Just like we do. We do the same thing, by the way.
That's why human beings are always valuable. And even though back to Jason's earlier comment, Iron Man is the best analogy. No matter how great machines do stuff, you still need a human being in there to tweak it, to keep it. Because no machine is infallible. Because it's made by humans. So it can't be infallible.
So we're going to be around as recruiters for a little while longer.
I think so. Because
I did not mind. Sorry, Mike's comment telling me I misspelled something. Like, right. I still don't know what he meant by BO.
So
I think we'll be around for a while.
Yes, because we have the soft skills, at least in theory. Although some people can argue that the soft skills are disappearing among the, but still, machines can personalize information, but they can't make it personal. But that you need another human being. So
well, that's a good line.
So we can make retirement. We'll be 20 years or so. Yeah, we'll be all right.
Time will tell.
Maybe 30 for Audra.
Well, I think what we're going to see in real life when it comes to the recruiting workforce is that the recruiters are going to change. We're actually, I'll give you some inside baseball for Ranstad. We in Sourceright specifically, we're in the middle of a massive transformation of our workforce right now because automation is showing up and it's taking a big chunk of the administrative work that recruiters have historically done. So the value of the workforce that we have that has done any of that administrative work is going down, and we don't need as many of those anymore. What's interesting is our customers are asking us for a more consultative experience, a more engaging experience. So we're in the midst of, while we're driving the automation thing, we have this big thing called talent velocity that we're driving through. We're also reskilling the workforce, and we have a campaign called I Am a Talent Advisor, and Jim is a big driver of some of this stuff, but we go through several modules. So one is I'm a purple squirrel hunter. We're still really hard to fill jobs, niche skills. Machines aren't going to be able to do that as well. We're still going to need experts for that. Robots do my bidding, the setting up the robot stuff, the bot-based stuff, and setting the autopilot in the landing. That's necessary. I'm a marketing master, learning how to communicate effectively with groups of people and do drip marketing campaigns, all those sorts of things. I'm a community builder, building talent communities and cultivating talent. That's something people have to do. And then I'm an expert empowered by data, so using data to drive more powerful consultative discussions. So that's what our workforce is transforming into versus order takers, administrative, which sounds way better. Sounds like a way better job to me.
Yeah.
And that's I don't see this as a negative thing. I see this as a leveling up of our industry. I think it's good.
I do, but then I also wonder, because of the interaction I've had during the week on LinkedIn with some of the baby recruiters, as I'll call them, because they're young, maybe, pre the internet, or like post the internet, as opposed to me who's pre, who are just incredibly almost juvenile in their actions with, oh, well, I can just spam and that's fine. I don't know that they'll have the consultative skills. I think you'll end up having to teach that, if that makes sense. I'm waffling a bit.
We're working really hard to train those consultative skills right now.
Yeah.
The hard reality of the thing is there are going to be some people who just aren't able to keep up. Yeah. And unfortunately, with our work changing, we'll lose some of those people along the way. But hopefully we'll gain some that are even stronger in the things that are more relevant going forward.
Yep.
Also, one thing we're doing too with go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's okay. We've only got 5 minutes left, so I just wanted to.
That's crazy. I can't
except I've completely forgotten the name of our guest for next week. Audra, I'm having a moment, but you know it. It's Derek. Derek can't remember his surname, and we're talking about, does experience really matter?
Yep. Derek Murphy Johnson. I met him at Talent Brand, and we're going to be talking about more recruitment marketing a bit more. Actually, no, I'm sorry.
I got some data for you on does experience really matter. I'll send it to you.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to. We can all look at your fearless leader to know whether experience matters or not. We aren't, blows the whole recruitment process out of the water, no? Anyway, right, enough about that. We weren't going to talk about that man, were we? So what were you just going to say, Jim, that we completely interrupted you from?
I forget. I remember now. I was going to say also that I like that one thing we do at our company is VSO, which is volunteer service.
Yeah.
Where people can work in a different country and do volunteer type of work. I like that our people doing that, not just because of the altruism behind it, but also because it also helps to maintain empathy, which I think is also lacking for a lot of people. I think that's one of the things that helps to set us apart is that our people can be very empathetic. They know how to talk to folks. Yeah. And although we're using machines and automations and robots to do a lot of the work, we're not that personal touch.
Yeah.
Which is what I like about us.
That's really cool. That's really good to hear. So maybe that's where the next juvenile recruiter writing silly comments on LinkedIn, I'm going to say, do you do any volunteer work? That's going to be my bog standard response now. Perhaps you should. Come back to me when you've done something.
It's not a bad question. That's a good question to ask. Yeah. Volunteer is hugely valuable.
Yeah, because I think it would be really interesting to take it off in that tangent. So, and it certainly changes me, and that's where I'm going to be next month. So I'm not going to be on a couple of shows because I'll be out in Uganda with retract charities. So,
cool.
Yeah, very excited. I know. Very, very excited. And you've all been very supportive of that, so thank you. So that's it. We did it. 100 shows. Holy crap. We've lived through all sorts of things, including the demise of Blab, and then we went somewhere else that was crap as well. And now we have this amazing platform, thanks to
Jim was actually on one of our. Jim, you were on one of our earlier shows. I think a good 2 years ago or so. You were on.
Yeah. I've been on this show before.
I think Jim might have been on twice, actually. This could be number 3 even. You've been on a few times.
I know we did at least one because I saved a PowerPoint. Oh, I took a screenshot of our talk and put it into one of my PowerPoints.
It
was an innovative recruiting strategies is what it was. Yeah, innovative recruiting.
Got it. Did we? It just froze, right? Okay.
No, I froze. You can see me?
No. You're back. You're back. Yep. It just froze in the middle of the word innovate, which I thought was quite funny.
But you did remind me to take a screenshot for posterity's sake, so I did.
Were we all smiling? Can we all smile on purpose?
Are we on? Okay.
We're all doing your thing. Jazz hands.
I was picking my nose, probably.
Someone screenshot. That would be awesome. Right.
Jim, are you wearing shoes or just socks today?
I have on shoes today because we're virtual.
Right. So I will see you in Seattle. We'll get Audra there somehow. Thank you so much. It really has meant the world to us for you, particularly because we thank you as well. So you were a little surprised. So You didn't get the same amount of marketing as others do. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts for doing that for us. And thank you to everyone that has been so chatty down the side. Still chatting. There's a whole argument going on down there. Can't wait to read it.
Everyone.
So thank you. And we shall see you all at the same time next week for 101. Bye, guys.
Nice to meet you, Jason.
Bye.
See you guys.
Bye.